Hi, welcome to today's webinar, 5 Actionable Strategies for Overcoming Manufacturing Challenges in 2024. My name is Stacy and I'm on the marketing team here at Limble, and I'm so happy you decided to join us today. Before our speakers take over and dive into the content, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items. All phone lines have been muted to maintain the sound quality of today's event. This webinar is being recorded, and we will send out the recording to everyone who's registered to be here today. We do have a packed agenda, but I encourage you to ask questions via the questions box on your webinar screen. We will try to answer them if time allows at the end. Without further ado, I'm excited to pass it over to you, Brian, and our panel speakers, Chris and Robert.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. So we'll go ahead and do a quick round of introductions. I'm Brian Christensen, founder and CEO over here at Limble. I started Limble about 9 years ago when I came across the fact that the maintenance professionals and facility managers that I was talking with just drastically needed better tools. They were running into all sorts of problems getting their teams to do the basic work orders and PMs and whatnot. So started Limble about 9 years ago, and that's my background. Robert, would you like to go next and introduce yourself?
Yes, Robert Penrod here. I'm Director of Facility Maintenance at Turbine Aero. Been in the aerospace business for over 30 years. Been at this organization for 6. Been a challenging market for preventative maintenance here at this location. And Limble's done a great job for us to get us in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you, Robert. Chris, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. My name is Chris Ortiz, Maintenance Engineering Manager at Louse Truss in Burlington, Washington. I've been there about 5 years. Areas of focus are obviously maintenance, research and development, and like overall process improvement. I've been in manufacturing operations for over 25 years. Prior to working with Louse Truss, I own my own consulting and contract engineering company for 15 years. Working with hundreds of clients across North America, implementing best manufacturing and maintenance excellence practices. And I spent a lot of time during that period of my career writing books and a lot of public speaking on the content.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. So as everyone can see, we have 2 people here on the panel that have, between those two, between Chris and Robert, has almost 50 years of experience dealing with maintenance and facility management, especially in the manufacturing space. So the goal of this webinar is to discuss some of the main topics or issues that maintenance teams are going to be facing in 2024 and provide real actionable strategies for you all to be able to take away and apply at your facilities. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and start on the first topic. So I want to talk about upgrading or maintaining your current infrastructure and equipment and how that is super crucial for having reliable operations, meeting best practices, complying with all the different laws, and basically anything else that's required for long-term success. So again, in the context of either upgrading or maintaining your current equipment or infrastructure, I'd like to turn it over to Chris first to talk about the challenges. Like, how do you approach that in your facility?
No, that's a great question, and I think for a lot of people, and definitely those that are listening, is where do you start and what's your baseline for getting started? When I first started at Louse Truss, I kind of walked into the position and I kind of noticed something that like I couldn't see, right? Like I couldn't see what was going on. I couldn't tell what priorities were in the department. There was no really like a vision or goal where, the organization wanted to go with maintenance. And, before we started really creating these kind of grand, goals, I was like, we need some baseline infrastructure in place. So then one of the first things that we looked at was, creating goals and metrics for the department. Where do we want to be with uptime? Where do we want to be with minimizing downtime? Do we want to measure failure rates? I mean, what are our goals and metrics, right? So it's really difficult for you to, begin your kind of what I would call your best practice journey if you don't actually have a target in place. And that was the first thing. As far as, what Brian said about equipment and things like that, it was like, okay, well, where are we right now with our equipment performance? before we create goals for, again, things like uptime or overall equipment effectiveness, what is our current condition of our equipment? So before we could create any form of preventative maintenance infrastructure, we baselined our equipment and figure out where they're at based on where they should be, and then where we want to take them to be able to maintain them. The next infrastructure was, some form of a centralized maintenance management system, which really, enables, you be able to see your department and make really good decisions on how you manage all the tasks. And Limble was a big part of that. And then, preventive maintenance schedules were put into place. But we also incorporated other best practices. So we incorporated some lean manufacturing techniques, drastic organization and cleanup of the department through things like 5S and the visual workplace. Spent some time really deciding how I want my team to look and what their skills are going to be. And then how we're going to create communication between us and production and to create a nice kind of synergetic experience to everybody. So, I know these are kind of like some broad answers, but it really is identifying what are those key infrastructures that have to be in place, then we can get moving. And that's kind of, Brian, how we looked at, getting started, was all those different infrastructure steps.
Yeah, I'd love to actually dive deeper into that. So there's probably a lot of people watching this webinar that their current plant is not running as well as they want, and they're looking around and everything's breaking, and they're basically like, how the hell do I get started here? And so you laid out 3 things that I just want to repeat back to make sure that people can understand this really easy. And then I'd love to dive into each of those 3 really quick. So the first is get a baseline, like just understand where things are at. Right? So what is breaking, and just basically getting a baseline. The second is setting goals. So now that you know where you're at, where do you want to go? Right? So is that improving uptime? Is that, most people it's probably going to be improving uptime, but you can in essence set a goal. And I'd love to hear the goals that you think are most important, but we'll come back to that in a second. And then the third thing is implementing tools that allow you to hit those goals. And so that often is like a CMMS like Limble that will allow you to put in PM schedules and ticketing systems to handle things when they break and whatnot. Well, let's go back to that baseline. Like if you had to in just 2 minutes sum up how to get a baseline, the quickest way to do that, what would you do?
Yeah. So what we did is we created what we called an equipment checklist, and I think it has about 25 different points that we evaluate on a piece of equipment. So it's really about taking this form and going from one end of the equipment to another, and evaluating its current condition. What's not running right? What are there leaks that we need to fix? Are there panels we can't get into? Are there noises that we need to rectify? It's kind of like taking your car to a mechanic and they do a complete inspection on it, and they say, here are the things you need to repair or modify or adjust. And once you get your car up to this level, then we can create like a car maintenance program for that. So it's really creating that baseline of how and what do we want to maintain this equipment to. You can't even start a preventative maintenance program if you've got filters that are clogged and you've got airlines that are leaking. Right? Like I'm using simplified examples, but so that baseline of equipment to get up to a standard of maintenance is really important, because if you don't do that, all you're doing is maintaining something that is operating in a substandard level. Okay,
cool. So getting the baseline is really figuring out what is the current state of your equipment and how they're functioning. Yeah. And then do you also do anything on how critical that piece of equipment is? Do you only focus on some equipment, or do you do anything when you're getting a baseline in that area as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have equipment categorized, honestly, when it comes to priority or critical equipment, to your point, is revenue creation, right? Yeah. So we have $250,000 saws that generate thousands and thousands of dollars an hour for us when we're producing product. We might have another piece of equipment that's vital to the operation, but it's not necessarily contributing to really contributing product that creates revenue. So we did make a priority list based on what are the, kind of like if this equipment goes down, how much money are we losing? And we use that as a comparison to where to start.
Yeah, I see this with a lot of customers we help onboard. They'll come to us and they'll go, we have 1,000 assets. It's way too much work. There's no way I can go check all of these. And then we say, well, hold on, let's do the 80-20 rule, right? Let's actually just look for the top 20% of your assets and I love how you tied it to revenue. That's what we suggest as well. Like, what is going to affect the bottom line for your organization as much? So in your case, it's like the saws, right? And so if you have to pick on the equipment, and I do think you should like start with the 20% most critical, you can get a return and set this up way quicker. Because I've worked with a lot of maintenance people, especially the ones that are coming out of a very reactive mindset, and it's just so much work. And so being able to prioritize there on the baseline, I think is really, really impactful. And I love how you suggest going off revenue. So, okay, let's move to the second thing, the setting goals. I'm guessing the goals are all going to be based off the baseline, or what, if you could give like 30 seconds on what type of goals that they should set.
Yeah. Your goals and metrics, at least the ones we created, aren't necessarily connected to baseline. So the baseline of equipment is a starting point for developing your preventative maintenance task and schedule to maintain what the goals and metrics are, where do we want to take the department? What are we going to measure in the department to not only show our performance as a maintenance staff, but also our equipment performance and how that connects to their overall strategy that the owners are creating for the organization. So we started with, we've had a lot of metrics over the last few years, but we've started with obviously with a goal for uptime, like where we want to go. I think at the first year we picked 98% uptime as an overall factory. We started to measure unplanned maintenance hours compared to planned maintenance hours. Like, so how much time are we spending in reactive maintenance? How much time are we spending in proactive maintenance? And can we increase those ratios where we can increase our planned and decrease our unplanned? Because our unplanned is 100% connected to downtime, right? We looked at number of failures as a metric that's been really good. Average time of downtime, average time of repair time. Those are the kind of metrics I'm talking about.
Okay, cool. And so some of these metrics people may be watching or monitoring right now. Some they may not be monitoring right now. If they're not monitoring, for example, like uptime for some reason, how long do you suggest that they monitor it before putting in a PM plan? So you have a before and after. Should that baseline on those metrics be like a couple weeks, a month? What time frame would you suggest there so you're using a good data set?
Ooh, that's a good question. The way we approach is here's our target in the future, right? So it's maybe we want to be up to 98% uptime within, say, 10 months. I'm using that as an example, okay? But we might have micro targets we need to meet in between that to get to that point. I'm a firm believer of putting the goal out there and then creating strategies to get to that goal. And having that goal in place of say, uptime of 98% allowed us to backfill what are the PM schedules going to be, what are the improvements we're going to make to the equipment as we move closer to that goal, if that answers your question. So.
Yeah, so let's say I'm running a plant. We are tracking uptime from our production system, and it goes ahead and says the saws are all running at 95% uptime. Sure. Right. Then you'll set and say, hey, in 10 months, I want to be able to go ahead and change that from 95 up to 99. And that 4% uptime increase should be able to gain the company X dollars because a saw, one of the saws produces X dollars per hour. And so you should be able to back into the math there. So now you have the baseline of where your equipment's at. You have a goal set out. The next thing is, you mentioned implementing the tools because the PM plans are probably pretty difficult to set up if you're just doing it off sticky notes, right? Like no one should do that. Obviously, I'm biased, right? Like I run a CMMS, but honestly, I've seen setups where people are using Excel sheets and sticky notes, and it's a nightmare. So if you could talk really quickly about implementing a CMMS, and then I want to go ahead and swap it actually over to Robert to talk about this a little bit as well.
Great.
But I want to put a bow on the advice you have here. So if you could talk a little bit on implementing a CMMS to try and help with this.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great tie-in. So, you know, with the thing with the baseline, Brian, is doing the doing the baseline on the equipment, and then it's supposed to create an action item list of things we need to fix or improve on the equipment to get it to a maintainable level, right? So that needs to get moving, because we can't do a whole lot until the equipment is basically running at a level that we can maintain. And now we have our goal out here as well, which is fantastic. So in between that is, you know, we took the PM schedule that's recommended by the equipment manufacturer. We had a cross-functional team of maintenance staff, engineers, production workers, supervisors, and we went through the critical points on the equipment that we feel we want to maintain, and what frequencies those need to be, what tools need to be required, what supplies need to be required, what type of daily checklists we're supposed to do to verify that work's getting done. We created an autonomous operator PM schedule for things they're supposed to do on a daily basis to help maintain the equipment. And then my maintenance staff came around and we did our weekly and monthly PM. But also a really critical component was, when operators see something wrong, how is that information getting back to us for us to resolve? And, you know, Limble was really effective in not only creating a preventive maintenance schedule that has automatic notifications and sending emails to people when their work request has been complete, is having that internal work request system where we have it on all of our computers throughout production, that any given time an operator can quickly go on the computer and go, the belt is squeaking on saw 21. It's still operating, but please take a look at it. And that's really important, because then it allows us to be way more proactive and respond to something that we, I guess, Brian, considers slow time, right? Like it's not it's not down, but it's not running optimal. Well, let's get to it before it goes down. So yeah, it was a real cross-functional group of getting the PM schedule in place that we thought makes sense, and then the communication system in place between production and maintenance so we can get on top of stuff before they get bad. And honestly, that really did we began to see our metrics begin to improve from that, just by those things. So.
And how quickly did you see the metrics improve? Like if I was a maintenance manager in a plant and I'm looking to turn this around, like improve our uptime, how quickly do you think, from your experience, could you do it?
Well, you know, some things are industry specific, Brian, right? There are some environments where 80% uptime is actually an industry best practice. You know, and some other environment, depending on your equipment, like some equipment really is designed to just run and run and run and run and run, and it's impressive, right? And there's some types of equipment that needs a little more attention. But to answer your question on what we saw, I would say within about 6 months, we began to see not just noticeable improvements to the metrics we were following, but kind of like celebratory results, like, oh my gosh, like this is making a big difference. And at the end of the day, you know, the baseline, the PM schedule, starting Limble, having our goals, those are all fundamental things that you absolutely have to have in place. And it showed to the other managers that without having these simple tools in place, we actually are creating some very complex problems. So
yeah,
that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. So I'm lucky enough, because I've been doing this for almost 9 years now. I've seen this story play over time and time again, where we set someone up and you see their entire operations turn around. And one of the best situations was finance actually reached out to them. It was a customer that had about 30 plants, and they were like number 29 when it came to profitability. They started using Limble a year later. You know, they jump up to number 2, and finance reaches out and goes, "What the hell is going on over there? Like, what changed the numbers?" But no, that totally makes sense. So just to reiterate, for anyone that's running into this problem here, right, get a baseline, and that you can be done through an equipment checklist. If you want to see what Chris's is, Chris, would you be willing to share that with people if we include that in the email at the end of the webinar?
Absolutely. And I have a website that has some resources people will download, and one of the documents is an actual machine baseline form they can download for free.
Perfect. Okay, so step 1, get a baseline. Step 2, set your goals. And then step 3, implement a tool to be able to help you do both the PMs, but also the reactive work, so that you can go ahead and take care of your equipment. So awesome. Okay, Robert, sorry, I went deep with Chris there a little bit. I want to most definitely ask you the same question and get your take on what you've done with your facilities.
Well, Chris has done a great job speaking to that. And just to piggyback off Chris, the baseline, I started here, we were paper, just like a Post-it note, doing paper, printing it out, trying to do PMs, no tracking. So it was very difficult. So, just to get your 80-20, get it started, get your assets in Limble, get your PM started, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual or annual, and just get it started. It's easy. It's too easy to put the PMs into play, and then your employees can use the cue cards that you can put out on your machines, or use the computer to submit your tickets for service requests. And once you get it started, then you can create your dashboards for your reporting side. Then you can monitor your uptime, your downtime, what piece of equipment is costing me more money per month. And we use the reporting side to see, if I've got a piece of equipment that's costing me $10,000 in a month, then I need to look at that piece of equipment and dig a deeper dive into it. So you get that baseline started, you get everything loaded in Limble, you start it, and you just got to start using it. It's too easy not to use Limble, and getting these things set up and getting your PM started. My team welcomed Limble. They were very excited when they got into it. You're able to track and record. And one of the other great things about Limble is a lot of these corporations out there go through audits. When somebody says, we need to see your PM schedule. And when you can pull it up out of Limble in 30 seconds and show them a PM schedule on a piece of equipment, I've had auditors say, let me have your business card, because the next company I go to, I'm going to recommend them to use Limble, because it's so easy to track and monitor your equipment. Too easy, way too easy. So, and again, you just got to get it started. Our operators are doing daily PMs, weekly PMs, and then our maintenance teams come in. They do the monthlies, the quarterlies, and semi-annuals. The other piece, I've got contractors that are using Limble for us, our HVAC services, our CNC services. They use Limble for us as well. So everyone can use it.
Managing vendors is a whole challenge. I don't think we included it on the top 5 this year. We could do a whole webinar on the challenges of managing vendors and how do they help you with the maintenance. But I want to come back a little bit to setting up, getting the baseline, setting the goals, and implementing. There was a great question by Gary that typed in where he was asking on the topic of how many of the maintenance tasks do you assign to your operators versus the actual maintenance staff itself? Is that like a 30-70 split, operators getting 30%, or what's the best practices for having your operators help with the maintenance? Because I believe, Chris, you talked about that a little bit, and Robert, I think you might have talked about it briefly as well. So actually, Robert, do you have operators helping with your equipment, maintaining your equipment?
Yes, they do. It's the simple daily and weekly PMs. It's almost like your startup of the piece of equipment. So, a maintenance guy is not going to go out and start the equipment for them. The operator's got to have knowledge and perform some of the PMs. So I'd say it's about 75-25%. When you start getting into the heavier PMs, the maintenance takes over then.
Okay, so the general rule is for operators, just keep it simple, and it's probably tasks like cleaning debris or cleaning off, just like what are the general tasks or most common tasks that you have them
Check
do there?
your oil
Obviously, there
levels.
can be. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, check your oil levels and the equipment. It's the visual checks. You know, do you have any frayed wiring on the piece of equipment? Things like that. It's the simple items.
So the simple visual checks, and then if you're using the right tool, you can have that. You know, if they flag a visual check as failed, that'll automatically notify the maintenance team. And then you typically have, like, say there was a frayed wire. Does the maintenance team go out there that day to fix it, or how quickly do you suggest responding to, you know, if a visual check fails, or does it just depend on the visual check?
No, it's urgent requirements. So you get into a safety aspect, you're going to respond right away. So that becomes an urgent ticket, and they got to respond immediately to that.
Immediately. Yeah, I think a lot of these probably deal with a lot of safety issues, right? And so then that's probably why it's pretty urgent that they get over and fix it so that we don't have an operator getting hurt. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say. That is our standard here. Anything pertaining to safety is urgent, and it's a must to get it done right away.
Perfect. We got a couple other questions that came in on this topic, so I'm going to do a couple of them. So lubrication routes, should that be operators or maintenance team members?
That would be the maintenance team members. That's generally done on your monthlies or quarterlies.
Cool. All right. Okay, cool. Another question is there tracking for the training required for the operators to do this, or how do you transfer the knowledge from the maintenance techs to the operators? One thing I'll say is I want to hear you answer it. I want to answer that a little bit myself. If you use a tool like Limble, like a good CMMS, you can actually build step-by-step instructions with pictures to check. And so there's not so much about you're having to transfer the knowledge and an operator has to memorize it all. Instead, it's right there on the phone for the operator to do. So it's crystal clear. It's like using, if anyone's used wikihow.com, like it literally is step by step with pictures. And so you're not having to track, is there training required how to do it? Because you just have a very, very, very basic visual or very, very basic, or sorry, easy to use checklist of what to do. But Robert, what have you found that you needed to do training for the operators to do these type of maintenance, or how do you combat that?
So let me give you an example on our monthly PMs for our CNCs. They're actual simple checks. We print out the Limble check sheet, we laminate it, and we call it a placard and stick it on the machine. The operators actually get to perform that, and we walk through it with them step by step. They check off what they do, and the leader of that department is actually the one checking it off in Limble. They've got it on their phone. They'll go back to their desk, sit at the computer, but at each machine, the operator performs it, checks it off that they're done, and the leader comes back through and signs it off in Limble.
Cool. Okay, this is super helpful. We're only on the first topic, so I'm going to move on so we can talk about a couple other stuff. I swear we could dive deep in a whole bunch more into that, but I want to make sure to cover some of the other areas. So the next topic is really about reducing downtime, and the first topic was kind of covered this a little bit, but I want to dive deeper on really how do you reduce downtime, because that's one of the biggest challenges of 2024. It's not just making sure things are running effectively. Even though running effectively affects downtime, but downtime is one of the biggest costs, right, to manufacturers, and it directly impacts being able to hit all the goals that we have in place as a manufacturing plant. And so with that in mind, what strategies, and we'll go back to Chris first, what strategies do you use or are you putting in place to maximize uptime? And you talked about slow time. That was an interesting concept as well. I wonder if you can touch on that as well. But yeah, let's talk about downtime, uptime, and slow time.
Downtime, uptime, slow time. Okay. Well, everything's about time, isn't it, Brian?
Yeah.
It definitely is.
Time is money.
Yeah, no, it's well, also too, lost time is incredibly frustrating. I mean, Robert, I know you can relate to that, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's not always just the financial or the productivity loss. It's just frustrating, And I'm a firm believer in reducing frustration in any operation. But anyway, not to get off too on that one. So yeah, so part of the answer to this question is all the baseline of infrastructure stuff, like that has to be into place to get moving. It's but to continually to maintain the uptime that you get to, what I did was like, okay, so we have the PM schedule in place and it's doing its job. And to Robert's point, we've got the operator PM system in place, and our system is actually quite similar to his as well. So we have production. Production has a stake in it, right? They have skin in the game. Maintenance has skin in the game. And then the next thing we started to look at was, well, how robust is our parts and inventory system? And I think there's a question that we're going to cover that a little bit. But I have no interest in having my equipment down because of a bracket or a hose or whatever critical parts we feel are important to have in stock, that we're not running out of those things and they're readily available. It doesn't mean we have everything possibly under the moon in our inventory. It just means what are the critical components. So that's part of it. That's part of maintaining the uptime. I really spent a good amount of time in cross-training my staff, building the staff that I need with the right skill sets. And I don't mean just like they can turn a wrench. I want problem solvers. I want people to look further ahead into it and really get into the predictive maintenance. That's really important. Something I call asset preservation, like what can we do to the equipment that can make it last longer? What modifications can we make on it to run better? We incorporated an end of shift report that the shifts communicate back to maintenance, and maintenance does to the production crews to let them know maybe some things that they did or they saw that hasn't been communicated yet. That's actually been really effective. We have an open request document and meeting every Monday we have with production to let them know the status of their work requests that they have submitted. We have downtime debriefs. We have an official debrief session on any time equipment is down for longer than 30 minutes. We spend time discussing why it went down, what were the remedies, who was involved, and what new PMs can we now put into place that will help minimize that moving forward. I'm sure Robert's got a response to that as well, but that's kind of some of my initial answers to that, Brian.
That's awesome. I want to go through some of these, and again, try and give actionable items so that people can walk away from this webinar.
Absolutely.
And go, hey, let's try this out. So first, the critical parts in stock. That for people that don't have that, if they're not tracking their inventory in at least an Excel sheet, again, obviously you should use a CMMS, but you got to track it at the bare minimum. If you are tracking it, you can see that you have those critical parts in stock. So how would you flag the critical part? You can go look at the manuals, or do you wait for something to break and then you go, no, that's a critical part, I always keep that stocked? Or how do you flag what is a critical part so that you can make sure you have that in stock?
Yeah, there's really three criteria. So first is, it's always good to start with whatever the OEM says, right? Like, what does the equipment manufacturer say should you have for spare parts? Always a good place to start. Doesn't mean you have to follow it blindly, but it's a good start. Honestly, after about 6 to 8 months of having Limble and having PM and unplanned maintenance tasks closed out and tracked, ran a report. We ran a report and just said, oh, here are the parts that we use predominantly to keep equipment going in the PM system and schedule. Ran a report on unplanned maintenance. What were the parts we used for that? And then the third thing was a pretty deep evaluation of our vendors' lead times, right? So we may not have let's say it's a motor. I don't know, I'm just using an example. it might not be a critical part, like we're not changing motors every 3 months, but to get the motors, an 8-week lead time.
Yep. I've seen that happen too. And
yeah,
so
so it's like, okay, we're going to swallow the cost right now on something we probably won't touch for a year or if longer. But the reason for that is I don't want to place an order for this and we can't get it for 2 months.
okay,
So those are the three. Those. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's super helpful. So again, we're talking about how do you maximize uptime. So let's pretend you have PMs in place and you're doing the basics of a PM plan. How else do you maximize uptime? And the first thing you mentioned was critical parts and being able to if you're running a system like a CMMS, in maybe 6 months, you're going to be able to pull reports and see what parts are we using, especially when the equipment went down. And then you go check your parts inventory and go, okay, we need to make sure that we're always keeping X of these parts on hand so that when those equipment go down again, we can just swap them in like that. And we don't have to wait 8 weeks for a lead time on a motor. So that I think is
or even 3 days, Brian. Even 3 days.
Or even 3 days. 3 days is a lot of money too. You know, it's the 3 days having a production line down is not good. It's not good at all. The next thing that you talked about, which I like a lot, is this end of shift report. And I like it a lot because it's super easy to implement. I think everyone on this call could probably have this implemented next week. So can you talk a little bit about the details on the end of shift report and how that helps with the uptime? And again, in the context, I want to try and give people things to walk away with and set it up right away so they can get value out of it right away.
Okay, so the end of shift report is not a replacement for Limble's work request system. Okay, so that's a fantastic thing to have into place. End of shift report, the purpose of the end of shift report is, you know, maybe they didn't get a chance to get to the computer and submit a request. Maybe the supervisors were working with their crew and they found something that was not necessarily right, and they were able and were authorized to make an adjustment to keep running. And maybe that happened on a night shift when there's no maintenance staff there. In our situation, we don't have maintenance staff, but they're on call. Or the maintenance staff did something during the day to make an adjustment, and we wanted to let the night shift know. So we were like, okay, there actually is a gap here in communication. Like, we need to know these things that are going on that aren't necessarily going through the standard infrastructure. So I created an Excel spreadsheet. It had all the equipment on the left-hand column. It had it has columns that say, you know, what were the issue and what you did. If there was no issues, they just check the word no. Because sometimes, most of the time, we get end of shift reports, Brian, that are blank. But I want them to get in the motion of always turning that in to maintain this new process. But every once in a while, something comes in and says, oh, last night at 11 o'clock, I had to adjust the chain on our press. It wasn't a major issue, but I want maintenance to know when they come in that we had put our hands in there, and they might need to check it before they go about their day. And I didn't realize, Brian, to be honest with you, with everything else we had into place, how incredibly effective that was. It was incredible. Because that information, closing that gap was just, wow, it was impressive. So.
Yeah, and I love that because, again, it's super easy to implement. Right?
Oh my gosh!
Like you don't have to. Yeah, go ahead.
Tomorrow.
Sorry,
no, you're making a call tomorrow. Like I don't know what time's the next shift start. Like what, you know, like it's easy. Yeah.
Yeah, super easy. And so the downtime debriefs, is that in the same area where it's like once so end of shift is, you know, when the shift ends, but downtime debriefs, is it like once a week you get together to talk about why something broke, or what is downtime debriefs?
The criteria for a downtime, it's another form that basically is like a it's a debrief. Yeah, it just has information on it. We made it in Excel that talked about what happened and how it was rectified, and then action items for how we can maybe reduce or eliminate this in the future. And our criteria is 30 minutes or more.
Cool.
Right. So if equipment goes down for 15 minutes because an airline popped out and they put it back in, that doesn't warrant a downtime debrief. Cool. That might go on the end of shift report, right? So maintenance knows a hose busted out. Maybe go check the pressure or check the clamp. But 30 minutes or more warrants a discussion. It might be 10, 15 minutes, but it's a roundtable discussion. Now that's our model. Some other facilities, they're like, oh my gosh, we have 30-minute downtimes 3 times a day. Well, then it's a different system you need to put into place, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah, you calibrate it to them. Maybe for them it's an hour, or maybe it's only an hour on certain equipment that you see as critical, right?
Completely.
And yeah, we could talk a whole bunch about that as well. We'll have to do another webinar on that.
Yep.
But these are some great tips to get some systems in place to improve the communication and basically maximize the uptime. Robert, how about you? What have you seen that's worked outside of doing the basic PM schedules? Like doing basic PMs is going to get you the biggest lift on uptime, in the long haul. You got to do preventative maintenance. But what else can you do that you've seen has worked well, Robert, to help you improve uptime?
Well, just by using Limble and putting the tickets in and just getting it started, the data is it's there. It's on the back side of Limble. You create your reports, how you want to see them. When we have service tickets that come in, we evaluate those service tickets and see how many times this piece of equipment has had issues. So when we look at that, we may make additional PMs for the issues that we've had, and so now we're gonna create more PMs for that one particular piece of equipment. So it's just using the report and using the data that you've already got after using it and say, I may need to add a couple more PMs, whether it's an operator on a daily or a weekly, a monthly, or a quarterly. So that's the nice thing about Limble is that the data's there. You just got to use it, put the tickets in, and it's just too easy to put a ticket in. When we talk about communication, my team doesn't work the off shift, but if we have a couple small shifts that work, and if they put a ticket in, those guys are still getting contacted as soon as they put it in because they're the ones receiving the tickets. I'm not managing tickets myself. The technicians are getting the tickets right away. So it's a 24/7 communication as well. So if it's a urgent need, then that's their call in to come in for the off shift as well. So that's one of the nice things. The parts piece, we haven't got into the parts piece yet, but we're still using the tickets. And if we got to replace parts, we're using the data to help us understand we need to go ahead. We're not going to buy just one, we're going to buy 2 so we still have it on the shelf. So we're using Limble that way right now, but we are just now getting into the parts inventory piece of it. And I'm very excited to get into that.
Well, yeah, you're gonna like it. There's a couple questions that came in that I want to answer real quick. So the first one, and this one's just super easy. Will the webcast be available on demand? Yes, it will. So that's nice and easy. The other question is, who do you recommend the end-of-day shift reports be performed by? The supervisors, leads, operators? Who would you suggest does that?
Is that for me, Brian?
Either or. I mean, both of you do the end-of-day shifts. So
I mean, I'll let Robert take that one. I spoke there for a while, so Robert, you can take that if you want.
So we actually don't do an end-of-day. What we do is I have a daily meeting scheduled for 10 minutes. It's a 10-minute meeting, and it's a Teams meeting as well. So no matter where the technicians are, where the leaders are, because the lead at each facility is invited. And the first question is, do we have any major equipment issues? They come in at 6 o'clock. We meet at 7:50. You got any major equipment issues? And we better have tickets in and discuss it. So it's 10 minutes, 3 sites, and I call it the 2-minute warning of football, that each site gets to speak and say what's our issues, so that we're not going to talk about this for an hour, because we need to go take actions if we have equipment down. And that's our communication and how we do it.
I think that's fantastic. I'm definitely a huge fan of like the stand up quick meeting and stuff like that. That's really great. To answer the question of this individual, the answer is my maintenance lead sends them out, and the production supervisor sends them out.
Cool. Okay, team, let's move on to the next topic. This is a hot topic that comes up a lot, which is basically sensors and IoT. As the world gets more complicated, there's more data flowing around, and more data flowing around allows you to be able to do a lot more action. So I'd love to hear from both of you. And we'll let Robert go first this time. How do you see the manufacturing industry moving towards advanced technologies such as sensors and IT in 2024? Do you think that's going to become a big thing? I know it's constantly moving that way, but how much do you see the manufacturing industry moving towards that?
Well, for us, we're a smaller organization, and we still have older pieces of equipment. I believe Chris is really up on the technology. He's probably got a lot more to speak about that, but the technology is moving in that direction. So sensors and definitely, but I don't have a lot to say there. Again, we're stuck in the older pieces of equipment and trying to make sure they're staying up and running. So I'm gonna let Chris talk to that one.
No, I mean,
Sure.
that's a good point. I mean, a lot of people might be getting pressure to go, hey, well, you got to set up sensors this year, you got to move that way. But having your perspective that it's like, hey, you're not doing that this year, and you're still seeing a lot of success, might give some good context to others. But Chris, I'd love to hear your answer to this.
Yeah, I mean, just a real quick, dovetail off of Robert is like, I am also a firm believer in like ensuring that we don't implement a new technology and then we get a diminished return. Right?
Yep.
Like sometimes it's like we're going with what we have right now, but with the question, we have spent a lot. Yeah. To answer this question, I would say that we are beyond, and it's taken like 5 years, but we're definitely beyond downtime mitigation. We are more focused on what we call our slow time now, right? Like things are running, we don't have a lot of downtime anymore, but we want to get really to that next level. Like I tell you right now, when you hit like 98% uptime, to go up 1 or 1.5% is so much harder.
Yep.
So it really is. So we are the second truss company in North America that has incorporated robotics into our production areas. And it was a big leap. It was with a company that was just trying a new system, but we've now integrated robotic assembly and material transfers. All of the preventative maintenance schedules for the robots are in Limble. We track it just like every other asset, but we are incorporating robots now. There's kind of a learning curve on that for everybody. We've started to incorporate, and I think Robert does this too, we have a lot of what we call internal visuals. We have a lot of cameras inside of our equipment that are monitoring critical points. We have cameras inside our saws, and there's a screen that the operators can look at to get real live views. We're able to log into cameras on the robots, cameras on our equipment to be able to say, oh, if something happened, can we just go back in the cameras and see what it was? And we could see, oh, the robot collided with this, and we have to change. Oh, okay, I see now. Okay.
That's super
of course,
smart. Yeah, when I've thought about sensors and whatnot, it's normally like temperature and vibrations and whatnot, but just actually setting up some video to watch for when something breaks, you can actually see how it broke. I bet that gives a lot of information on how to set up something so it won't break that way again in the future. That's very, very smart.
Well, and any robotic system has a ton of sensors, so it's already in there, right? And then the last thing and again this year we're really focusing on technology. Right? Again, asset preservation, less downtime mitigation, is we have a system that my staff is able to log into any computer module at all of our equipment from anywhere off of their phone. So if let's say I have a maintenance tech at home, and he's the one who's on call for the week, right? Most of the time, if he gets a call, he can log on his phone into the computer and walk an operator through a troubleshoot and not even have to come in. obviously we compensate them for their time, but like, and then when we're training, right now we're training a new person in another facility and he's the only person there in maintenance. My team can view the cameras in the equipment and around the equipment, and they can log into the computer on that saw, and they can walk this new person through a troubleshoot without even having to really be there. And we're starting to kind of see the rewards from all these new systems we put into place. So there's just some examples of things that we are doing right now.
That's super helpful. So if I was watching this webinar and it's like, crap, I don't even have my PM set up or a CMMS set up, should I even be thinking about any of this type of stuff, or what would you suggest that I do?
Well, I'm a firm believer in doing any best practice to get moving. But and Robert may have a different opinion about that based on his industry, but I'm all about the basic fundamentals first. Like, the cameras and the team and the access to computers is really nice and really helpful. But if we're going to move the meter on our metrics and goals, it's everything else we've talked about.
Cool. So yeah, getting the basic fundamentals right, which we talked about a lot on this webinar. As we've been doing this webinar, I've been writing down a whole bunch of different topics. We're going to have to do follow-ups to properly dive into some of these different areas. But okay, cool. Let's move on to the next topic. Sorry. So the next topic is all about getting proper training in place and the proper staff, right? A lack of qualified staff hinders efficiencies, productivity, product quality, basically everything. If you don't have good techs and you don't have good staff, how are you going to run well? So if you could talk a little bit on how you're addressing this challenge, and we'll go with Robert again first on this one. How do you make sure you're training people the right way or finding the right people so that you can have qualified, good staff?
Well, I can say I've been pretty lucky since I've been here. I have a gentleman who's been here for 45 years, and
wow.
he's very knowledgeable. He's the top of the line technician. He's the go-to guy, and he's helped train new employees coming in for us. It is hard to get great work, people coming into the industry, but when we do, I use him, I leverage him, and he's one of the guys that's jumped into Limble, has helped me with the training of Limble, and Limble's just so easy. Anybody can do it, and you just got to get started. You got to start it, whatever, load your assets, start loading PMs. It took me a week, and we were up and running, and it's just started.
Very cool. Very cool. Chris, do you have anything to add to it?
Yeah, I do. I had someone similar to what Robert had. I had a guy that'd been there for like 25 years, but he's close to retirement. And, the biggest thing was some knowledge transfer to, a new team that I'm creating. So your staff needs to be in place based on where you're at in your journey with maintenance, right? So, 5 years ago, I needed just the really good standard maintenance mechanic, understands mechanical, electrical, pneumatics, like stuff like that. And then now as we're progressing into more technology and more asset preservation and slow time reduction, I'm like, I need scientific people. I need problem solvers. I need people who can do root cause analysis. I need people that have an engineering background. Like we're a maintenance engineering department, right? And so basically the answer is twofold. One is that kind of scientific engineering root cause solving person. And then we incorporated over a year ago in our organization 5 core values that represent where we are as a business. And the owner spent an amazing amount of time and a really good amount of time of instilling that on our people. And I've started to use that as the second component for hiring. Does this person, from what I can see, fall within our core values? And if they fall within the core values and they have that problem-solving mentality, I can teach somebody how to change a chain, right? I can teach somebody how to change out a motor, or I have a team that can do that. And that for us has been probably the best approach. And I have the team that I need to move forward now that we do a lot more technology and a lot more innovation and a lot more slow time analysis. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just echo the culture. And so I've been blessed enough and lucky enough to start a company, Limble, obviously. And from early on, we put in a very strong and clear core values. Like, this is who we are, and this is our attributes that cause us to win. And that has helped us attract so many good, I love my team. They're all phenomenal people. And the having those core values of just stating who we are helps keep so many people that we don't want here out, where we're merit based and we're all in and we're customer obsessed, and I could go on and on about. So setting that up, and you don't need to do it for the entire company. If you could just do this for your maintenance department, just set like, this is who we are, and then live it. That will help attract a lot of qualified staff. We're getting close to running out of time, and we got a lot of questions coming over. So there's been a lot of questions about what Limble can do. There's going to be a demo, there's going to be a webinar that focuses on a demo. The questions are probably better for those on, like, can you do priorities of work requests and all that. Long story short, yes, you can do basically all of the questions that came in, yes, but go to the demo to watch that. And then you can get a lot more questions there. There was also questions around specific food industry stuff. I want to be able to talk to that a little bit. Well, just letting you know that we have a lot of food manufacturers. And so maybe actually we don't have time to go into that. I want to try and leave time for the last question. We'll try and answer those questions in a write-up that we can send afterwards. But yes, there's most definitely. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Chris.
And that real quick, Brian, is I did a pretty long series of webinars last quarter with Limble for training and things like that, and I let Limble know, hey, my email address is available, and they can email me with questions, not necessarily about Limble. I mean, that was something that you guys answered. Any questions anyone has about anything about manufacturing and maintenance, like, I am available to talk to them. It's not a problem. So my email can be definitely available for them.
Well, you're both you and Robert are rock stars. That's why we wanted to bring you on the webinar. You all
totally
helping people.
Yeah.
And that's our goal here at Limble as well, right? It's just like, we like to say, let's empower the unsung heroes that support the role. And so anything we can do to help.
Let's not hold on to information that can help people become better in their companies. It seems silly 100%. To me. So.
Oh, for sure. My email is available as well. And Limble is just it's so customizable. I've got HR in it. I've got engineering in it. I've got security badging in Limble. So it's customizable and it can be used anywhere.
100%. Okay, last topic is on supply chains. And honestly, team, I don't think we'll have enough time to get to it. We'll have to talk about the challenges of supply chain and managing parts in a different webinar. And so let's go ahead and wrap it up. I answered as many of the questions that we can. Let me skim really quick to see if there's any other quick ones. Yes, we can share the email addresses. We'll include that in the email that's sent out. So an email will be sent out with a recording of this. We'll make sure to include the email addresses of both Chris and Robert, and then also the equipment checklist. Chris, is it okay if we also send like an end of shift example and a downtime debrief example as well?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So we'll include those in the emails as well. And then last question, I think we can do this quick. From a maintenance point of view, will IoT equipment and facility requires what type of skill to perform the maintenance? Will this create additional hurdles aside from the current backlog on the existing maintenance talent acquisition gaps? So I'm guessing what this means is on IoT equipment, it requires a different level or expertise. Like, does it require a different level of expertise compared to the more existing normal maintenance work?
Explain IFTs.
the IoT, so like sensors, like, so the more complex like sensor equipment, does that require different maintenance skill sets that are going to create additional hurdles when recruiting people?
Oh, for us, absolutely. Like when we made the decision a couple years ago that we're moving towards robotics, but in general, we're moving towards new innovation. It was a complete reset. Well, this is where I was talking about earlier. This complete reset. I was like, oh, okay, well, I need problem solvers. I need people with root cause analysis. I might need people with Six Sigma background. I might need people with, I hired a guy that he came from a, he came from like a scientific think tank, very little equipment background, right? He's become stellar. So you bet, like it changed everything. It doesn't mean that the work is necessarily more complicated. It's just a different mindset.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, team, we're up on time. The last thing is Chris, Robert, thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge.
Thank you.
So willing to help.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's super, super invaluable. I mean, between the two of you have 50 years almost of expertise, and I really hope everyone in attendance of this webinar was able to pull out some actionable items that they're able to go implement here in the next week, so they can actually get a return, a value from spending an hour on what is it today, Thursday, listening to us. There also was a lot of questions asking about functionality in Limble. Can Limble do this? Can it do that? Can you customize this? Can you customize that? Typically the answer is yes, but please show up on this live demo where you can ask more questions that are more about Limble itself versus like maintenance strategies, and we can get all of those questions answered for you. Or if you want, you can also go to our website and just fill out a demo form and get a one-on-one presentation. If you really want to dive in deep, we're always willing to talk to whoever about our software and what it can do. So please don't be shy and just reach out. So with that in mind, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, Chris, Robert, thank you so much. I really appreciate you spending the time to do this.
No problem. Thank you.